We are back with another reaction video to a Jubilee Middle Grounds episode. And this one might be a little spicy. I got to be careful with what I say on this one, on YouTube specifically, but this one is a hot topic nowadays. It is called "Do White People Experience Racism?" And already I can hear people screaming on both sides of the spectrum saying, no, they do not, and a bunch of people saying, yes, they do. And I just thought, why not hear it from the people that feel so strongly? And I will give my reaction, thoughts, opinions, ideas. But with all that being said, before we jump into it, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. Now, I think we just jump right into it. Let's see what we got. Ooh, here we go.
Middle ground is a social experiment that brings humans with opposing beliefs or experiences together. These discussions may contain viewpoints that are the result of misinformation. Remember to seek out experts and to be critical of your own biases while forming an opinion. Please see the humanity in each participant, and as always, we encourage empathy.
Two things can be true. You can have had a very hard time. Privilege is not just limited to white people, but to say white privilege doesn't exist from a historical context, to me, is respectfully absurd.
That was a nice little intro.
Step forward if you agree with the prompt. White people also experience racism.
What? Only three?
Racism is
Four.
not
Four.
One.
Five now, okay.
It goes always. It doesn't matter if you're white, if you're black, if you're Asian, it doesn't matter. You could experience racism no matter what color your skin is.
I think that people have a propensity to kind of have an aversion towards what's different from them. I've been called a cracker before. I've been told I was going to get beaten up because I was white. I would argue that on a systemic level, white people don't experience racism the same way a lot of other races experience racism. But I would say on an individual level, any group is capable of being racist towards another group as well.
So the argument against this position frequently is that racism is a system, not a sentiment in the United States. And I agree with that really strongly, but at the same time I'm Jewish and racially white and have definitely experienced racism, discrimination. The paradox is that most of that racism is coming from white people or European society, white nationalism, etc. that's directed at Jews. So I'm Dane and I'm Jewish. I'm proud of being Jewish and being connected to an ancient religion and culture, but I'm not proud to be white, I would say. White privilege, I think, is an aspect of American society. I think it exists. When I go to a job interview, I don't have to worry about my hairstyle or the way I normally speak or my name. And that's something perhaps a black person would have to worry about.
Can they disagree or step forward?
I kind of have to disagree with what that guy said on a couple of things. I mean, I've never experienced it or seen anybody's probably a better way to say it. I have never witnessed anybody that is not white experience not getting a job because of their hairstyle, although I know it exists. So I'm not saying that it doesn't exist, or, you know, just because I haven't seen it means it doesn't happen. But that's also the same. People discriminate all the time as employers on who they're going to hire or not going to hire. And especially if it's like a customer-facing position, if they feel like you're not presentable, no matter what your race is, they're not going to hire you because maybe you don't meet their company's image. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't instances where race doesn't play into it, in which case that would be wrong, but to just assume that a minority of any type doesn't get hired for a job is because of their race or their hair or whatever is ridiculous, in my opinion. And this sounds silly. I'm not saying that I'm like this omega proud white dude, but to say that you're not proud of your race is, I don't know. I mean, I would think that no matter what your race is, you should be proud to be who you are. I mean, maybe I just misinterpreted his context, but we'll keep going. We'll hear what the disagreeers have to say.
So I just want to say that I want to validate everyone's individual experiences.
I can already tell I'm not going to like her right off the bat. The fact that she needs to say that I want to validate your experiences tells me that she's or they, whatever their gender is trying to put themselves on a pedestal and almost make it seem like they are more woke. It's like my word of the week right now is woke, more woke than everybody else.
I do also believe that white people experience bias, prejudice, but the reason I did not step forward is because, by definition, racism is tied to power.
Wrong. 100% wrong. Racism is not tied to power.
And economics. You talked about systemic.
It's not tied to economics either. Not at all.
Discrimination. I don't feel white people experience racism by definition and by actual.
All right, hold on. So really quick, I'm pulling up the definition of racism just to make sure that we don't misconstrue. So I'm right here. It says prejudice, discrimination, or antagonism by an individual, community, or institution against a person or people on the basis of their membership in a particular racial or ethnic group, typically one that is a minority or marginalized. Not once does it say anything about power or economics. So you are wrong.
Concept.
What is the definition of racism and who wrote that definition?
In the late 1500s, early 1600s, there was slavery. They started bringing over slaves, but there was really no concept of classifying people in terms of race. It's just we're bringing these people over and they're slaves. What ended up happening is some of the slave owners who were white started mixing with some of the slaves. And now here you have these black people that look like the people that are owning things. So they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. The theory of race was formed to classify a group of people who would be lesser than and have less economic power, and this would be imposed against them for hundreds of years. So that has not been the white experience in this country, but it does not invalidate the things that white people experience. It's just not racism by definition. Is it prejudice? Is it bias? Is it wrong?
So this lady's argument gets discredited already, even though what she's saying might be true. I don't know. I mean, I wasn't alive back when they were bringing slaves over on a boat, but and neither was she. But to start your argument off with an incorrect definition immediately discredits your entire argument, and then she repeats it multiple times throughout her argument, which further discredits whatever she's saying.
Yes.
Mine is simple. If one person treats another person differently because of the color of their skin, to me, that's racism.
I'm going to like Jimmy. Jimmy and I are going to get along here because that's all it is. That is all racism is discriminating against somebody because of their skin color. That's all it is. It doesn't need to be anything more than that. It doesn't need to be anything less than that. That is an all-encompassing term or definition that will describe racism.
I will tell you that I was stopped by the police plenty of times when I was a young man. And I will also tell you that I then decided to spend 35 years as a policeman. I'll tell you that I stopped lots of kids coming home from school. Depending on who it was that I stopped, the first thing out of their mouth would be, "You only stopped me because I'm black." And I would say, "You're driving a sports car with a back window that's this big. I can't see who's driving, and I stopped you because you're doing 95 and a 55. I had no idea who I was pulling over until I stopped you. Now, if I treat you differently because you're black, then I'm a racist. But if I write you the same ticket that I was going to write you before I knew who was behind the wheel, I'm not."
So I'm glad you used that example, and I want to commend you for your service.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy. So what that guy said is entirely true. Good old Jimothy. Everything that he said is entirely true. And I would almost argue that no matter how he wrote the ticket, even if he wrote the ticket knowing their race, nowadays he would still be classified as racist, because it would be, I gave him the ticket because they are black or whatever. Like, clown world is what we're coming across right now.
Our country, but I do want to say, because I've actually taught classes for the LAPD and for their cadets about these issues. But what I can say, which is a statistic, and which is also a fact, is that 60% of our prison population is African American.
Different issue.
Yes, but let me finish, please. Is African American males, right? When you go into a system and you are kept in that system and you're cycled through probation and there is a systematic sequence of oppression, that's not happening to white males. So it's bigger than just the stop itself. It's the system. My name is Sierra. I'm an actor, a speaker, and a human rights activist. I'm very proud to be African American, to be black.
See, and that's good. Like, nothing against this lady, but the fact that she's speaking, that she's proud of her race is amazing to me. Like, she's not ashamed to be African American. And I'm surprised, honestly, with her being an activist, that she used the term African American, being that term is being slowly eliminated from our language.
Challenges that come with being black, also being a black woman, are very real. I'm at a place in my life where I'm acknowledging these things are real, discrimination is real, the systematic oppression of black people is very real, but
it's not. It is not.
I will succeed in spite of that.
The police force is foundationally racist.
I want to make a point, because, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a topic in here just based off of what this next question is. But what off of Sierra said, there is no systematic or systematically racist, that's the right term, policy in our government today. I mean, they're good old JB, Joe Byron, our fearless leader, is known for drafting a crime bill back in the 90s that specifically targeted people based off of their race. And for whatever reason, he became the most popular president in history, wink, wink. But there's no policy out there that exists today that targets people based off of their race. In fact, typically minorities are let off more frequently now after the big Black Lives Matter movement, where police are afraid to act on anything crime-related, or even if it's not a crime, like, it could just be any interaction. Like, people are afraid to do it because they're afraid they're going to be called a racist. It's like it's almost like it's becoming more of an issue the more we talk about it. What's that? I need to find that clip of, I think it's Samuel L. Jackson, that's like, how do we stop racism? And he immediately cuts off the reporter and he says, you stop talking about it. Okay, I think this one had to do with police.
I want to start off by saying I don't think that every cop out there today is racist.
Same.
I think there are a lot of them who are really doing good work. What I know from the establishment of the policing in the United States, that is directly from the slave catchers who were hired to catch runaway slaves and bring them back home.
Yeah, I agree that all cops aren't racist. I had plenty of interactions with police that were fine, but I was told by a former police officer who was, a cop who decided he didn't want to do that anymore, that, the training is pretty much specialized for only colored people, especially black people, that if you're around them, they're the most dangerous, so you have to act in certain situations or react in certain situations,
I think I just really want to emphasize that I really think that there are some officers who are white that don't even believe that they're doing anything that may be racially motivated, because they're simply doing what they were taught to do.
I come from well, and it's not racially motivated. I'm sure they're going to touch on it here in a second. The problem is that statistically, and I have to be careful with what I say here, if you look at the statistics, typically black people commit more crimes percentage-wise than white people do. Same thing with Hispanics. And it's not a race issue, it's a culture issue. And I will take it one step further and say it is a father issue, more along the lines of fatherless homes. I think that having a father in the home will prevent a lot of these issues, and the the communities that are most affected by fatherless homes are minority communities. And there's a reason that the training pushes towards the certain things that it's Dino, I'm assuming it's Dino, that he mentioned about police specifically targeting minorities, and it's not get them because they're black or get them because they're Hispanic. It's statistically these categories or these minorities of people tend to do these things, so maybe I should tread a little bit more lightly. And now, again, like I mentioned earlier, it's almost going the opposite way. Like, they tread almost extremely lightly because they're afraid that if they do anything, they're going to end up on CNN and potentially in prison for whatever they do. So, like I said, I have to be careful with what I say because I know that the YouTube overlords might take me down, but just know that statistics play a huge part in this.
A police family, and I'd like to add they do offer diversity trainings in the academy. So either it needs to be more extensive, or maybe we need to take it a step back and fix the selection process, because that process could be inherently racist. Hello, my name is Nia, and I am Black. I'm proud of my race because when I look back historically at what people of my heritage have gone through, and to see where we are now, it's remarkable, and it definitely pushes me to continue to be resilient and innovative as they were.
Historically, people formed groups, villages. Some people were hunters, some people were farmers, and then you had whoever was going to protect the group. And over hundreds of years, thousands of years, whatever it is, that's how we wind up having cops, firemen, armies, and navies. Community policing as a theory is a good idea. As a practice, it has some hiccups. When I show up at your house because you and your husband got into it and he beats you up and I'm friends with him, so do I want to take him to jail? He's my friend. Or I live in the same neighborhood and I go deal with some guy who's a really bad dude and he says, I know where you live, I know where your kids are. So to some degree, we have to have a little separation. This is going to get into a hot button topic, but I will tell you that, when I watched the horrible video of George Floyd, I will tell you that I can justify many of the things that happened, but I cannot justify 9 minutes on his neck or back. But what I can also tell you is I, as a policeman, and this is my personal opinion, only two, the officer who was on him for 9 minutes, he probably spent too much time in the same neighborhood dealing with the same problems over and over again that he became jaded.
Isn't that what being a police officer is?
Yeah. It's a social service job.
And you're assigned to that district or that community.
But I think you need to move around so that you get to see other things. You don't become that jaded.
The police, no matter.
And the problem, too, that I wish good old Jimmy would have mentioned is that you might deal with the same broad-scale scenario or situation on a daily basis, but every scenario is different in terms of who it is, the particular crime at hand, how they're going to react. There's so many variables that you can't count on to be the exact same every single time. And so there's a protocol that people have to follow that's kind of like an all-encompassing. If this happens, do this. If this happens, do this. And I'm not going to try and defend the police officers in the George Floyd incident. I have opinions on what I think transpired and how all of that stuff went down, which maybe I'll do another video on that. But I think that it's worth mentioning that the protocol was, there are many, many, many people in the police community, and specifically in the higher ups to Mr. Chauvin, however you pronounce the police officer in George Floyd's incident, that said he did what he was trained to do. Not he did it because he's a racist. It was, this is our protocol. And it's sparked change in how they handle those situations. But there's a lot of people that are like, there's nothing that he did wrong. It wasn't like he did it out of malicious intent. He might have, but they're saying that he did what he did because he was trained to do it. So I just wanted to throw that nugget of info out there. So let's continue this.
No matter what your race is, we have to be integrated all together with the community. And it doesn't have to be community policing, but we all have to understand each other more. I think cultural competency would be very helpful. Like, that's my issue. Whether or not the foundations of the police force was or still was racist, now we can change that, but it starts with cops. Like, at the end of the day, it's the bad police officers that are our issue. Not all police officers, but the bad police officers, we need to vet them out, and the good police officers, we need to encourage them to be amongst the community.
How do we vet them out?
By making the police unions accountable, because I feel like that demographic of officers, they're actually making things a lot worse for the other officers that are actually just trying to do their job. I think that we need to get some type of real accountability. That I don't think the police should be policing themselves. So when those cops that aren't upholding their oath, they can be properly removed instead of getting all of these passes.
The bad police officers, I hate the term like the bad apple. It's like, no, you're a faulty grenade. Like, you're ruining your whole department reputation. I feel like I was held up to higher standards working at Whole Foods sometimes. I got 3 chances out, but like Derek had so many.
17 reports before George Floyd.
17 reports. It's like, get him out of there. What are you guys doing?
Do you think police officers, and I genuinely am curious.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how reliable the LA Times is, but I would be curious, and I'm not speaking from fact or anything. This is just a question that I'm posing here. Is I would be curious to know how many police officers that have been in the force for an extended period of time, how many reports they would have against them for misconduct or whatever, improperly handling a situation. Because my guess would be is that police officers probably get complaints all the time for how they handled situations. But again, I don't know. I would be curious if anybody knows that or where I could get that information. That would be great. Post it in the comments below.
Do you think they should get paid more?
I think police officers should get paid more. I also think police officers should do less. Why do I get sent to all of the mental health cases? Why do I get sent to all of these things? Now, I'll tell you why I get sent to them, is because we'll stop sending the police there, and then something horrible and tragic is going to happen, and they're going to say, why didn't we have a cop there?
Do you think we need to have different divisions like mental health and just other, or maybe even specific police that are just for the schools? Like, do you think that would help with a lot of the issues?
No. We do have specialized police officers in certain things, but if we keep specializing and we get so compartmentalized that I can't go, I'm right across the street from you when you're screaming for help. Yeah, that's not what I do. Got to go find the guy that deals with screaming women or whatever it is. My name is Jimmy, and I am a retired police officer. I'm not going to tell you that there are no racists on the police department. I don't think blacks were historically treated fairly under the law. I think that we have made great progress, great strides. I think we have to continue to get better, but I also think we probably see racism to this day in places where it maybe isn't.
Yeah, so that's Jimmy made a point. I think people now are specifically, maybe I misunderstood his last point there, but I think people are specifically looking for racism in places where it doesn't exist. Like, I posted this on Twitter the other day, or today actually, but it's kind of funny. Like, people are calling everything racism if it's something they disagree with. And I'm going to butcher the story, and I'm paraphrasing as best as my memory can recall here. But there was a news report about bridges in New York being racist because the bridges are short, and therefore public transportation, which is in this particular community the primary source of transportation for minority communities, can't go under the bridge on the public transportation, so that makes the bridge racist. True story. It's what the reporters are calling for is racist bridges. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but that's pretty silly.
I sometimes wish I was a different race.
Wow, one person. I thought it would have been, two?
I'd say not so much these days, but definitely 100% when I was a kid, I wish I was white. I grew up with my white mom. I didn't see my black side of my family after a certain point. I grew up in a small town. I was often the only student of color, definitely the only black kid. And I had this kinky hair. I couldn't figure out how to work with it. And everybody also would call me an Oreo. It was always just being othered. And so being a kid, you just want to fit in. And for me, I wanted to be white. I just wanted to look like my mom, wanted the nice straight hair, and I just wanted to feel like included.
Yeah, I remember in elementary school, I was thinking, no man is ever gonna like me because I freaking look like this. And I just remember hating my hair because as soon as puberty hit, it just blew up, and people kept on asking, do you even need a pillow to sleep at night? I'm like, I can't stand these questions. I can't do this. I'm Jordan, and I am biracial. I think being biracial is definitely living in the in-between, because culturally, yes, I grew up white, and I completely know that. I was raised by my white mother, but then there's also a part where race is perceived, and it's what people put on you and how they respond to you in your everyday life.
It's so interesting because I grew up in predominantly non-Black communities, and for some reason still being the minority at home in the family as well as in school and in the world, I was always so proud to be Black. I actually really yearned to be around other Black people. So thankfully in college that was an experience where even though we made up a small community, I was still able to, okay, this is people that look like me.
I was in the military for 6 years, and I was usually the only Jew in my battalion. And I think that isolation produced a sort of pride and understanding of who I am and where I come from. So
I have never wanted to be anything different than what I was, but that's because I really never thought about it. And to your all's point, maybe, I don't know, but maybe people treated you that way because there is this sense of wanting something that I haven't ever had before. I'd love to have a Lamborghini. You know what I mean? It's different than any other car I've ever had. It's different than what I grew up with.
I think personally for me, I was actually adopted by white parents in very diverse family. I think 6 out of the 8 of us are all adopted, all different races. I kind of have my own story apart from everyone else. And the same for everyone else that was adopted in my family. They have their own story. I always had pride in it, but at the same time, my parents are my parents no matter the color of their skin. It's the people who raised me, and they raised me just to not look at it through the lens of race, and that's what I've always done, and I've never wanted to change my race at all either. I'm Joshua, and I'm Black. I've never experienced racism. I've experienced stuff from people from my own race. I grew up in a white family by white parents. I was constantly called whitewashed. It upset me, but I didn't let it get to me. Being Black in America, to me, is just being an American in America, just like any other person.
So to touch on that guy's, Joshua's point, That happens a lot. I've learned is that if somebody in the Black or the Hispanic or the Asian community or whatever acts white, I feel like I just added the extra H in there, white. If people in any minority community act too white, that they will frequently be called whitewashed, and they'll almost be shamed because they don't act their race or whatever, which maybe by definition is racism, is you're thinking that because their skin is a certain color that they need to act a certain way, which, you know, that if a white person said that, if they're like, they went up to a black person and they're like, oh my gosh, you're acting so, you know, whitewashed, it would be like, racist, get him. But, you know, when it's black person to black person, it's, oh, it's fine. Yeah. So, you know, but in my opinion, it's racism no matter what.
White privilege exists.
I mean,
wow. Did everybody go up?
Founded by white people,
Whoa.
for white people at the time. All of the institutions were designed to benefit white people. So, I mean, of course, white privilege lingers into society today. You can't deny that.
Where I would argue with you just a little bit is I think we throw out the term white privilege far too often for things that aren't necessarily white privilege.
I've got to agree with you completely on that one. I think there's generational white privilege for sure, but I think now it's almost used as a reason to not try as hard. If we stop doing that, just really like work for it and not use white privilege as an excuse, then we could really get somewhere as in the black community.
I would respectfully disagree. Like, all of that is true to an extent. Like, I graduated university during the pandemic, the height of it. I went abroad for university. I got 2 degrees. I graduated with honors. Learned to speak 2 languages. I should have been able to get a job right away, right? No. It took me 9 months before I was able to get a job. Had to go completely outside of my field. But then when I looked at all of my white colleagues who were in my program, all of them were hired immediately.
I need to introduce.
Now, the problem with these stories is we're just getting like the sprinkle of details to whatever her circumstances are. I would be willing to bet it could be one of a variety of options, maybe one of 3 or 4 scenarios. The first one, bad interview. That, I mean, just seeing how she kind of is just, you know, like this when she talks and just like, yeah, like, I'd really like the job. I mean, depending on, I don't know what her degree is in or whatever, but very low energy, very, you know, just kind of meh. And it's nothing against her. It's just typically low energy people have a tougher time doing things like that. But it could be that, could be bad at interviewing. 2, her degree could be in something completely oversaturated. And 3, well, and this might not be necessarily a scenario specifically against her, but I mean, it could be maybe the company she's looking for or whatever, but I would be curious to know if there was anybody else that, you know, other than the white people that she mentioned, if there was any other minority group or, you know, colored person in, and I don't know if that's an appropriate term, but, you know, anybody that's not white that was also in the program that also got a job. Because the fact that she's only calling out white people, I think, is a problem in her story.
Introduce you to my daughter. She's white. Took her a long time.
And I'm not saying that. I'm saying
and
just
she didn't get her job in what her degree is in either.
I respect that, but my point is saying me comparing myself to the white students who were directly in my position, they're successful, I'm not.
This country.
Again, it's probably because you're not good at what you do. There's so many people out there that have degrees and then they change fields because they're like, wow, I suck at this, or I'm just not good at it, or, you know, whatever, which I guess those two are the exact same. But, you know, like people they get degrees all the time, and then they find out that they don't like it, they're not good at it, whatever. Or again, maybe you're just bad at interviewing. I don't know. I'm like aggressively talking to the screen as if I'm talking to her, but it's like, you could just not be good at interviewing, and maybe they just didn't want to hire you. Maybe there was other qualifications they were looking for that you didn't meet.
Country was founded upon white people coming and then putting in act Jim Crow and other laws saying that if you are not white, you are genetically inferior. You are not even a person. And some of those laws are still, and those systems are still in place today. Two things can be true.
No, they're not.
You can have had a very hard time. Privilege is not just limited to white people, but to say white privilege doesn't exist from a historical context, to me, is respectfully absurd.
Something that I learned about recently is the privilege that exists in the medical field, specifically relating to the birthing process in giving epidurals. There was a study that's recently, or was debunked, that said that Black people have a higher tolerance for pain, which then has been falsely used by people who help support births in being hesitant to provide the epidurals for Black women giving birth. A lot of women die in childbirth. I don't know the exact statistics. So
3 times more likely Black women are to die.
Thank you. The fact that
Okay, I have to read this because it's kind of a wild thing. Like, okay, so it says Black women are 3 times more likely to die from a pregnancy-related cause than white women. Multiple factors include or contribute to these disparities, such as variation in quality healthcare, underlying chronic conditions, structural racism, and implicit bias. I'd be curious to know how racism affects a child being born. My mind is racing right now, just trying to think of. I have 3 kids, and I've witnessed childbirth for all 3 of them, and I'm curious to think, or to you know. I'm curious as to how that process is racist. And that goes back to my point about the bridges. Everything is racist. I know that healthcare might be a potential issue, but access to healthcare is the same for everybody. Maybe affordability isn't the same for everybody, but access is there for everyone. I mean, anybody could go to the hospital and they're required to take care of you. It's their job. So, as for implicit bias, I mean, again, I don't know unless they're implying that the doctors have a bias or something, but I don't know. I mean, I would assume that it's a health condition would be the big issue, but to say that it's racist that white women survive pregnancies more than Black women do it's ridiculous, to say the least.
I will be taken seriously, more seriously than a Black woman in my place if I should be giving birth at some point. I see that as just an absolute privilege. My name is Bryn, and I just graduated, and I'm currently gaining hours to becoming a licensed therapist. As a therapist in school, we were taught to approach things with what's called cultural humility. Cultural humility is being curious, and instead of trying to have all the answers, working collaboratively with the client to kind of understand where they're coming from.
I have been fetishized for my race.
This is, I kind of noticed it on the last Jubilee video that I did, but it seems more prevalent in this one, is that you'll get 2 or 3 people that walk up, and then as they're almost to the chairs, you get the one person that's like, oh, wait, like, wait for me. Like, maybe they want to be a part, I'm part of the group. But I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in because that was funny. You get like 3 people to walk up and then 2 more are quick to run up and scurry up behind them.
The standard one, oh, you're pretty for a Black girl. I'm like, that's not a compliment. That's so weird to say. And like one of the go-to pickup lines for men, they're like, oh my God, what are you? I'm like, this is not cute. I'm tired of having this conversation. This is lame. Yes, I know I have green eyes, hazel eyes. Like, let's move on.
I think Black.
This chick, I forgot her name, and I'm not trying to be mean. I'm sure she seems very full of herself. Very full of herself. Like, just the way that she's talking and doing the hair flicks and all that stuff. And I know that she's doing it to be dramatic, but I mean, come on.
Black women in particular are just extremely sexualized and fetishized. Every day I go out, and making sure that my outfit is, okay, because I don't want to draw certain attention. The way I wear my hair, if it's in an afro, if it's in puffs, if it's in braids, I'm going to get treated differently. Yeah, every single day something happens.
So there's a form of positive anti-Semitism where Jews are perceived as like being put together.
This is gonna make me seem like a total idiot. Are Jews technically a race? I thought it was more of like a religion. I mean, I know that it's like technically a race, but I mean, if we're comparing apples to apples, shouldn't be like white people, black people, Hispanics. I mean, this dude looks white. I mean, I'm not assuming. I mean, I guess I am assuming technically, but I'm not doing it to be mean. It's just Dane looks like a white guy. I mean, it says right there, Dane, white. But he keeps going back to Jew, not white.
Coming from money, being doctors, lawyers, and
That's called stereotypes.
Women are attracted to those sort of things.
Which is true. Women are attracted to money.
And then also too, like all Jewish men are circumcised. Some women have that preference. So I've definitely experienced it, but I feel like it's a sort of subtle, trivial thing. Like it never really bothered me, but it's occurred nonetheless.
Yeah, I've had experiences in high school, college. People ask me to stop me, mainly women. Like, oh, are you Egyptian? Or are you black in this or black in that? There's always something. It's always black in something else. And
well, doesn't it say that he's biracial?
I'll let them know what I am, and they'd be like, oh, that's exotic or something crazy. My name is Dino, and I am biracial. I don't want people to think that I'm like split between being black or white. I acknowledge that I'm mixed and I'm biracial, but for the most part growing up, I was always considered black. I consider myself black. My family did as well. So I don't think we should live in a colorblind society, but I also don't think we should stay stuck and feel like we can't move forward and still thrive and accomplish things because of our skin color and where we live in America.
That's an important point. I'm kind of torn on that because I'm not saying that we need to live in a colorblind society, but I don't think it needs to be a colorful. The problem is we don't need to look at everybody through the color lens. Like, not saying that we need to completely like omit people's color and not acknowledge that, but I think too often now, more than ever in recent days, it's you see somebody of a particular race, and sometimes I feel like I get judged based off of my race, especially if I'm having an interaction with somebody of another race, which I do my best to treat everybody equally, like, just say hi, how are you, like just try and be a decent human to everybody. And sometimes I'll notice people will treat me different based off of my race, assuming that maybe I have privilege or whatever. Silly stuff.
I would just have a question for everyone who stepped forward. I'm just curious how that's like. What's it like?
Exhausting.
It sounds exhausting.
Yeah, I think Black women historically have a really interesting relationship with desirability. Culture.
That was a weird question to ask, only because I would have expected more of a conversation from it, like in her tone. What's that like? Like, I don't know. That's just me being nitpicky about it, but the fact that the only response she got was, I mean, maybe she got more and it just got edited out, but the fact that all they put in there was exhausting and then they just continued with the conversation. It's like, I think she was kind of hoping for more of a response and conversation about it.
Culturally, it seems as we're not desired. And then when we are, we're being fetishized. So it's like, okay, we're usually not desired, but now we are. Am I supposed to lean into this fetishization?
I think just being a woman, we deal with certain things every day, specifically being a Black woman, being fetishized. It's interesting because if I, especially in my industry, because I'm there to work and be professional, I'm just super professional and I don't give any attention to that at all, that kind of energy, then I'm an angry Black woman. So I think that it's just really...
you can't win.
It does feel like that, so yeah, that you can't win sometimes.
Yeah, and there's also a flip side to it. It's like, for me specifically, I'm light-skinned amongst majority dark-skinned people, and people will deem me or deem other light-skinned people as a certain way, as either weaker or less than, or just like, okay, you're lighter than, so we're going to be so pro-Black that we're not going to consider you as one of us.
that's racism.
You know, you're just other.
Well, that like touches just on beauty standards in the Black community, and that's colorism. Like I've even been told you're
Okay, this is a new term. Colorism. Differential treatment based on skin color, especially favoritism towards those with a lighter skin tone, and mistreatment or exclusion of those with a darker skin tone, typically among those of the same racial group or ethnicity. Okay, I was going to say, if it wasn't for that last comma, like, portion of the sentence, the last half of the sentence, well, that's all one long run-on sentence. So the last, what is that, fifth of the sentence, the typically among those of same racial group or ethnicity, I would say that that is racism, not colorism. I guess it's still technically racism. You're being racist against your own race, but colorism's probably a better term to kind of break it down one step further.
you're beautiful, you're not Black. You know, it's just like these little things.
Or you must be mixed with something,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
My name's Christina, and I'm biracial. I have been fetishized for the color of my skin on both sides. You know, Black men will be really into me because I'm light skinned, or other men who are not Black might be into me because I am that Black girl, but maybe I'm not too Black, and that, for whatever reason, is appealing. Being deemed as exotic or something other is just very problematic, and that plays into a lot of issues of colorism within the Black community at large.
So that's a wide. I can't speak on that, obviously. Like, that's a big can of worms that I don't know if I want to open. But the one thing I do want to say is I think people have things that they're attracted to, and some people are attracted to a certain race. Some people might find a certain race more appealing than another race. And fetishes are a thing. Like, there's people that have fetishes for basically everything. And, like, I'm sure that there's fetishes out there that aren't including anything to do with race, that make people probably feel pretty, you know, disgusting about themselves or whatever. And so to isolate the race side of it and be like, only the race one is gross because you have a fetish about being with a Black person or being with a, you know, biracial person or a Jew or but you know, it's a little bit silly to me. I'm not downplaying how these people feel because I get it. You know, them feeling uncomfortable in a particular situation because they're being fetishized isn't okay. But I also think they need to keep in the back of their mind that fetishes of any kind are normal. Like, people, and especially when you're coming across thousands of people, you know, every day or week or month or whatever, that, you know, you meet people and you see people, you know, out in public, like, the chances of finding somebody that's going to be attracted to you based off of your skin color are more and more common than they were 100 years ago. So it's just basic math, I would think.
We need reparations for the Black community.
Oh, of course, this is the last one. The last one. What?
I don't think people need like individualized like paychecks. Like I don't think that's gonna like work. But I think pouring funds into communities who could really use it, building jobs there, more education there, like more opportunities would do so much. Like, that's how I see it should be.
Anytime that Black communities in the US tried to, you know, pull themselves up by the bootstraps, they were attacked. Like, I think it was in Tulsa, they bombed the city.
What is this? The Black Wall Street massacre took place on May 31st and June 1st, 1921, when mobs of white residents, some of whom were given weapons by city officials, attacked Black people, their homes and their businesses in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Okay, well, that was 100 years ago. Not saying it's
Black
not
Wall Street
wrong,
was
but
completely destroyed. So again, something needs to be done.
When the Civil War ended, there was a representative from Ohio, I can't remember his name, but he was a radical Republican and advocated for the phrase 40 acres and a mule for every American.
40 Acres and a Mule was part of Special Field Orders Number 15, a wartime order proclaimed by Union General William Tecumseh Sherman on January 16th, 1865 during the American Civil War to allot land to some freed families and plots of land no larger than 40 acres. Okay?
Emancipated slave. So there was supposed to be reparations, and there never was. And I think especially as a Jewish person, I mean, Jews received reparations for the Holocaust and are still receiving them. And in my mind, there's no amount of money that will ever undo the wrong of the Holocaust. So that you could, all the money in the world will never make it right. But I think the idea and principle of reparations is good. Logistically, I don't know how it would happen.
All right, so I'm hoping Jimmy pulls through with this one, but I have, he's going to say what I want to say, but better. But reparations are such a joke because you're penalizing the people today that had nothing to do, and even my parents and my parents' parents and my parents' parents' parents had nothing to do. I mean, it keeps going, like another 2 or 3 generations had nothing to do with the mistreatment of black people, and to think that I now have to pay the price for many, many, many generations before me and their mistakes is asinine to me. Like, just like the black people on the screen, like, they weren't slaves, their parents weren't slaves, their grandparents weren't slaves, their great-grandparents, like the same generational lineup, but they want reparations because their great-great-great-grandparent was a slave or could have been, but probably wasn't. I mean, I digress.
I just wanted to say the reason I stayed back was because I wasn't entirely sure what was meant by reparations, but your example of the Holocaust, I would say that I agree.
So I forgot her name, the therapist lady, the one that's training to be a therapist or practicing to be a therapist, whatever the phrase was that she used. This is kind of the problem that I've noticed in society today, is that white people feel the need to dance on eggshells because they didn't acknowledge reparations or whatever, or anything. Like anything that has to do with race, it's like she came up and she's like, I'm sorry I didn't come up. I just didn't fully understand this or that or whatever. It's like, you don't need to apologize. You disagree, and that's okay. Or maybe she's torn, but you didn't fully agree with we need reparations for the black community. I mean, I could be misspeaking based off of her, I obviously don't know her full opinion, but I think that it's a little silly that she felt the need to kind of tiptoe and vocalize that. Like, it's okay that you stayed back. You don't have to feel ashamed that you stayed back.
Similar reason, when I think of reparations, I think of something similar to a stimulus check. My worry is, with the lack of financial literacy, will we actually make strides? So I would love the idea of investing money into programs in underserved communities, something like that. But I do have a fear that even if we did have the money, without that generational knowledge of how to take care of our finances, that it would just deplete and defeat the purpose.
Financial literacy is a problem in every community. It's not just a problem with the black community. Everybody deals with that. Why do you think Jeff Bezos is a freaking bajillionaire with Amazon? Why do you think the government printed out trillions of dollars in stimulus money, and that the big corporations, I feel like the term was the big five, but it was like Walmart, Amazon, Apple, like all these big stocks grew massively, and it's because when you give people money that aren't literate with their spending or their financial situation, they spend it. And so that the idea is to stimulate the economy. They insulted everybody without like directly saying, you guys are idiots and don't know how to spend your money. We're going to stimulate the economy by giving you money we know you're going to spend. Like, think about it. But it's not an exclusively black problem. That's why everybody talks about, like, I really wish that they would have taught me in high school how to do my taxes or balance a checkbook or, whatever, like, because that would be financial literacy. But no, we had to learn how to do calculus.
But even if that were to happen, though, I still think that would still be the right step. We'll give these people the funds or whatever. We'll give them our promise, and if they float or sink or whatever, that's on them. At least, like, we as a country took the right step.
I'm all for money going to the community. I am for that, because the communities right now are the way they are because of things in the past. But to give out checks to individual people, there's a difference between learning from the past and then still getting caught up in the past. I mean, if I had a time machine, I could go back in the time and be like, hey, you never gave us the 40 acres and a mule. I would be all for that, and I would get on that for the people who were affected and actually went through slavery. But in today's age, like no one's experienced it and gone through it. Yes, the communities are taking hit by that, but so I mean, I've never.
You don't think your ancestors experienced slavery?
I think they do, but I haven't. I've never been in it, so why should I get a check from somebody else who never put it? You should be going way back.
So what about?
Yeah, so it wasn't Jimmy. It was my Padres dude. He's the one that pulled through and said, "Yeah, well, I wasn't a slave. They were." And, like, why should I get all the money for something that they went through? Like, let's just finish this. We're so close.
What about the people who are the descendants of the slave owners who are still reaping the financial benefits?
Oh, my God. They aren't. There might be a family out there that's reaping the benefits of, their great-great-great-great-great-grandparents owning slaves. But it's not like they're over there. Like, there's no plantation that exists today where they're out there freaking whipping people in a cotton field. Like, it just doesn't exist. And they're like, yeah, they're still benefiting from the cotton field. Like, no.
Benefits of your ancestors who slaved in those fields for literally generation after generation. You don't think that during that time, your great-grandfather could have been building a business that could be flourishing by now? And you would have a multi-million-dollar franchise?
200 years later, you don't think you could have built a business that'd be flourishing? Well, 170 years later.
They do off the backs of others. You don't think that deserves some rectification for you in the present time?
To be honest, like, no, because it's something that happened in the past. Again, I haven't experienced it. I'm doing fine right now. I'm doing fine, and I'm not going to be all upset over somebody else's ancestors who I don't even know who enslaved my ancestors. I don't need it. I have no reason to have it.
So for me personally, I'm not upset about it, but I do feel my grandfather, on his side, they were the first family in the state of Texas to actually file for reparations. And for me, I'm succeeding in spite of that. But to this gentleman's point, when the government says, hey, we're gonna do a thing, obviously the government in itself saw the weight in the air of the wrong, just as the German government did. I think if I want to buy 90 gold chains, that's my business. I think it would be unfortunate, but I think that if I'm entitled to something, I think it should be in the same fashion.
She just said the golden word of the day, entitlement. I feel like I should do the SpongeBob rainbow. Entitlement. That's the... I'm trying not to curse as much. That is the problem with society today, is everybody is freaking entitled. Like, you do not need reparations. You don't. The problem is, too, is that what people don't understand is that it's like, this is going off on a totally separate topic, but I feel like it's worth noting just the little nugget of information. Maybe it'll start an argument in the comments. I don't know. But Republicans are the ones that fought for slavery to be abolished. Democrats are the ones that wanted black people to still be slaves. But you'll find that I guarantee you Sierra, or whatever the hell her name is a Democrat. It's probably heavily anti-Trump and all of this stuff, which is, again, I'm not going down the political side of it so much, but it's like the flag for the party that you support and are fighting for is the one that wants you to be pulled down. Like, when you give out reparations, you incentivize people to be lazy and to mooch off of the government. We're going to give you a monthly check because of your skin color. First off, racism. Second, we're now going to incentivize you to be lazy. Like, you don't have to work. You don't have to do better for yourself. You don't have to work hard. You don't have to go out there and kill it and be a badass and be a, multi-million-dollar CEO or whatever. We're going to incentivize you by giving you blank amount of dollars every single month so that you could sit on your couch and do nothing but say, awesome, I get paid because I'm black.
That the people of Jewish descent got it. I think it should be in the same fashion that the people that are Japanese descent got it. So You might think it doesn't affect you, but overall,
because it doesn't.
think that we have been greatly impacted by slavery, even up to current. I just choose not to focus on it nonstop so it doesn't become something that holds me back. But I definitely think it's something that we're entitled to.
Because it shouldn't hold you back. We're at the very end, literally 30 seconds left. We'll let it finish.
Thank you.
Great, guys.
It's always nice seeing this at the end.
It's nice meeting you.
Okay. There is so much to unpack there. I don't even really know what to say other than just like entitlement is huge. I mean, to just kind of sum things up, in my view, racism is bad no matter what, whether it's against white people, black people, Hispanics, Asians, anybody. Racism is of any kind is awful. Like when you say, effing white people or whatever, like that's racist. When you say, oh, you got this because you're white, it's racist. When you say like, you call somebody the N-word, obviously that's racist. When you say, anything that's derogatory towards somebody based off of their race is racism, without a doubt. I think giving anybody reparations because of their race is absolutely asinine, because again, it's almost enslaving people indirectly. Like we're going to give you this a lot of, it's not to say that people wouldn't take that money and like invest it in businesses or whatever, but just like, I forget the lady's name that talked about financial literacy, but like if you're so financially illiterate but you want money given to you all the time, I mean, she kind of pointed it out. It's like anybody, like that's why, again, the stimulus thing, that's why everybody, they got this free money from the government, and the first thing they did was spend it. Like, you're creating a culture of all races that are making people dependent on the government because they think that money is going to right the wrongs of the past. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Another fun fact, there are more white people. Well, first, there are more slaves in existence today than ever before. Second, most of those are white people. I think that's a little bit of a little nugget of information that's worth throwing out, because people right now are only talking about slavery in America. People don't talk about sex slaves or people in other countries that are slaves, and how big the problem is globally. But, again, it goes back to Sierra's beautiful word of the day, entitlement. Everybody here in the United States, and obviously I use that as a general term, is entitled. They think that this is what I deserve because of some trauma in, decades past or whatever it might be. And it's like, do you think that people that fought in World War II or World War I, like either of the world wars or any war for that matter, that actually have legit trauma, like it's like a slap in the face to them when you're like, I have trauma because my great-great-great-great-grandfather like could have been or knew somebody that was a slave, and so I'm traumatized by that. It's like, no, that's not like, it's not trauma at the level that you're making it out to be. I'm not saying that it's not traumatizing to you, but to say that all of us now have to walk on eggshells or pay you money every month or whatever because of your skin color, because of some trauma you think you might have, I don't know. Like I said, I have to be careful with what I say on YouTube. But like I said, in summary, racism is bad no matter who it's projected towards, no matter the color of the skin of who's saying it or who's receiving it. If you're targeting somebody based off of their race, it's racism, without a doubt. There's no systematic racism in place. There are no systems that are actively targeting people based off of their race. However, the good old crime bill that I mentioned earlier that good old Joe Biden put in place, look that up. I want to say it's 1994 crime bill or 1992 crime bill. I want to say it's 94, but look it up. Anyways, if you haven't already, like this video, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell so you never miss an update, and we will see you on the next episode. the next video for Real Dad Talk. Have a great day, everybody.